There is a diesel engine sitting in my father's workshop right now. It is a small Lister clone, the kind with the big iron flywheel that turns so slow you can count the strokes. It has been running since 1987. It has never burned a drop of petroleum, not 1 gallon, not 1 quart. The fuel sitting in the glass jar beside it is the color of dark honey, and it smells like the inside of a kitchen on a Sunday afternoon. My father pressed it from seeds he grew in the same field where he grows his hay. He poured it into the tank the same way his father did, and his father before him, and the engine started on the first pull the way it always does. Your neighbor down the road has a riding mower, a generator in the garage, a truck in the driveway, and a diesel tractor on the back 40. Between them, he is spending somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 a year on fuel. Every year, forever, for as long as he owns those machines. And the price of that fuel is being decided by men in rooms he will never enter, reacting to events he had no part in countries he has never visited. He has no say in it. He just pays. My name is Evan Yoder. I am Amish. I farm my father's land in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, the same land my grandfather built on in 1934. My family has never paid a fuel bill. Not my father, not his father, not me. And the machines on this farm work every day. They pump water, they press cider, they grind grain, they run a sawmill, they do not sit idle, and they do not run on wishes. They run on oil we grew ourselves, pressed ourselves, and poured into the tank with our own hands. I'm going to show you exactly what we grow, how we press it, what it costs to start, and which of your machines can run on it by next month. And I'm going to tell you the part that should make you a little angry, which is that the man who invented the diesel engine designed it to run on this very kind of oil in 1893, and the reason you were never told that is not an accident. It is a business decision that was made for you over 100 years ago by men who made their fortunes selling you the alternative. Stay with me. By the end of this, you will know exactly how to press your own fuel from seeds you can grow or buy for a few dollars, how to run a diesel engine on it without any modification, and how to cut your fuel bill down to the cost of a bag of seed and an afternoon of work. The whole startup, press and all, is under $200. The fuel after that is free for as long as the sun keeps shining and the seeds keep falling. Before I go further, for the folks who want all of this, every method my father and mother taught me, the ones I have shown here and the ones I have not gotten to yet, I have put it together in one place. I will not mention it again. If you want it, it is there. Now, let me start with what most folks get wrong, because if you do not understand this, nothing else I say today will land right. When folks hear the words alternative fuel, they picture solar panels and wind turbines and expensive equipment that requires a licensed installer and a bank loan. They think of technology, something new, something complicated, something that costs more than the problem it is supposed to solve. That is not what this is. What I'm about to show you is not technology. It is agriculture. It is a seed, a press, and a jar. My father sat me down when I was about 14, right there at the kitchen table with the lamp burning and my mother kneading bread on the counter behind us. And he told me something I have never forgotten. He said, "A machine is just a way to turn one kind of energy into another. The English think the energy has to come from a pipe or a wire, but the sun puts energy into a seed every single day for free. All you need is a way to get it back out. That is what a press does. It gets the energy back out." He was not being poetic. He was being plain. A sunflower takes sunlight and water and turns them into a seed full of oil. That oil has almost as much energy in it, calorie for calorie, as the diesel fuel you buy at the filling station. The only difference is who owns the supply chain. When you buy diesel, you are paying for the drilling, the shipping, the refining, the trucking, the storage, the taxes, and the profit margin of every hand the barrel passed through on its way to your tank. When you press your own oil, you are paying for seeds and an hour of your time. The energy is the same. The cost is not even close. Now here is the history, because the history is the reason you do not already know this. In 1893, a German engineer named Rudolf Diesel built the first engine that bears his name. He demonstrated it publicly at the World Exhibition in Paris in 1900, and the fuel he used to run it in front of that crowd was not petroleum. It was peanut oil. Plain, cold-pressed peanut oil. He wrote afterward that the use of vegetable oils for engine fuels may seem insignificant today, but such oils may become in the course of time as important as petroleum products. He was right, and he was ignored. Diesel believed his engine would free the small farmer. A man who could grow his own fuel would never be at the mercy of a fuel company. That was the whole idea. The engine was designed from the beginning to run on plant oil. Petroleum diesel came later. It was adapted to fit the engine, not the other way around. My father told me this when I was a boy, and I did not believe him until I read it for myself in a library book years later. The inventor's own words. The engine was built for the farmer. The oil companies took it and made it theirs. By the 1920s, the petroleum industry had built filling stations across the country. They had the pipelines, the refineries, the distribution, and the political connections to make sure their product was the only one available at the pump. Vegetable oil fuel did not disappear because it did not work. It disappeared because it could not compete with a system that had already been paid for by men who had no intention of sharing the road. The infrastructure for plant-based fuel never got built, not because it was impossible, not because it was impractical, because someone had already spent the money to make sure it never would. My father calls it the quiet kind of monopoly. Nobody banned sunflower oil in an engine. They just made sure you never thought to try it. Now let me show you what we actually do on this farm, because the history lesson means nothing if you cannot use it in your own barn this month. There are 3 crops we grow or buy for pressing, depending on the season and what is available. The first is sunflower. Black oil sunflower, the kind you can buy by the 50-pound bag at any farm supply store for about $25 to $30. These are the same seeds you see in the bird feeder aisle, but the farm supply bags are cheaper and they are the right variety. Black oil sunflower seed is between 40 and 50% oil by weight. That is an extraordinary amount. Half the weight of the seed is fuel. A 50-pound bag yields roughly 15 to 18 quarts of raw oil when pressed. If you grow your own sunflowers, an acre of good ground produces between 1,000 and 1,500 pounds of seed per season. That is enough oil to run a small diesel engine, a generator, a tractor for light work, all season long. The second crop is canola, which we call rapeseed in the old language. It presses at about 40% oil. It grows well in cooler climates. It is cheap to buy as seed, and you can find it in bulk from any agricultural supplier. The oil burns clean and does not thicken in cold weather the way some plant oils do. The third, and this is the one the Mennonite missionaries brought back from India and Africa in the early 1900s, is Moringa. The full name is Moringa oleifera, and it is the most remarkable of the 3 for one reason. It grows faster than anything you have ever planted. 15 feet in the first year from a seed the size of a small bean. It produces seed pods in the first season. The seeds press at 38 to 40% oil, and that oil is 70% oleic acid, which is the same fatty acid profile as olive oil. It burns clean. It does not smoke. It stores well. But I have to be honest with you about Moringa, and I will not skip this because it matters. Moringa only grows outdoors year-round in the warm parts of the country, USDA zones 9 through 11. That is Florida, southern Texas, southern California, Arizona, Hawaii, and the Gulf Coast. If you are in Pennsylvania like me, or Ohio, or anywhere with a real winter, Moringa is an annual. You can grow it in a large pot, bring it inside before frost, and it will come back, but it is not going to give you the volume of oil that sunflower will in a northern climate. My father is plain about this. He says Moringa is a wonderful tree, but it is a southern tree, and a man ought to grow what the ground under his feet wants to grow. In our county, that is sunflower. In Florida, it is Moringa. Grow what fits your land. Do not fight your climate. Now here is the heart of it, the press. You need a seed press, sometimes called an oil expeller or a cold press. This is a simple machine. You pour seeds in the top, a steel screw turns inside a barrel, crushing the seeds, and oil drains out the bottom into a jar. The leftover material, which is called press cake, comes out the other end dry and crumbly. That press cake is not waste. It is high-protein animal feed. Your chickens will eat it. Your goats will eat it. It goes right back into the farm. Nothing is lost. A manual press, the kind you operate by hand with a crank, costs between $80 and $150. You can find them online or at farm equipment suppliers. They are made of cast iron and steel. There is nothing in them that breaks. My father has had the same press since I was a boy, and it still works exactly the way it did the day he bolted it to the workbench. A motorized press, the kind that runs on a small electric motor or a belt off a diesel engine, costs more, between $300 and $500, but it processes far more seed per hour. For a family running a few machines on a small farm, the manual press is plenty. For a larger operation, the motorized press pays for itself in the first season. Here is the trick most folks get wrong. The oil must be clean. When it comes off the press, it is cloudy. It has tiny bits of seed hull and fiber floating in it. If you pour that cloudy oil straight into a diesel engine, those particles will clog the injectors over time and you will have a problem. So you filter it. The simplest way is to let the oil sit in a glass jar for 48 hours. The particles settle to the bottom. You pour off the clear oil from the top and leave the sediment behind. A step up from that is to strain it through a fine mesh bag, the kind cheesemakers use, or through a simple automotive fuel filter. A pack of fuel filters costs about $5 at any auto parts store. You run the oil through one of those and it comes out clear as cooking oil. That is clean enough for any diesel engine. My father runs his press on a Saturday morning, lets the oil settle over the weekend, filters it Monday morning, and the jar goes up on the shelf in the shop ready to pour. The whole routine takes about 2 hours of actual work for enough fuel to run his equipment for weeks. Now, I owe you the honest words about what this will and will not do, because my father raised me to tell a man what a thing is good for and where it stops. Straight vegetable oil, which is what we are talking about here, cold-pressed oil poured directly into a diesel engine, works best in older, simpler diesel engines, the kind with mechanical fuel injection. The Lister-type engines, the old Yanmar tractors, the single-cylinder diesels you see on generators and water pumps. These engines were built with wide tolerances. They are not picky about what they burn. They will run on sunflower oil the same way they run on petroleum diesel. I am not exaggerating. Modern diesel engines, the kind in your 2020 pickup truck with the computer-controlled fuel injection and the emission systems and the turbocharger, those are a different matter. They can run on vegetable oil, and plenty of folks have done it, but the oil needs to be thinner. In cold weather especially, plant oil gets thicker than petroleum diesel, and a modern high-pressure injector does not like thick fuel. So if you are running a newer engine, you either preheat the oil before it reaches the injectors, which some folks do with a simple heat exchanger kit, or you blend the vegetable oil with a small amount of regular diesel to thin it out, 50-50 or 70-30 depending on the weather. Or you convert the oil into biodiesel, which is a simple chemical process using lye and methanol that thins the oil permanently and makes it behave like regular diesel in any engine. I am not going to walk you through biodiesel today because that is its own subject and it deserves its own video. But I want you to know it exists, and it is not hard. Folks all over the country are doing it in their garage with a 5-gallon bucket and $20 in chemicals. The point I want you to hold on to is this. For the machines most homesteaders actually use, a generator, a water pump, a small tractor, a sawmill, a grain grinder, straight cold-pressed oil works. Pour it in the tank and run it. My father has been doing it my whole life. The Amish in Holmes County, Ohio do it. The Mennonites in Manitoba do it. This is not experimental. It is a standard practice among people who never stop doing it. And here is the part you need to hear about safety because I will not skip it. Vegetable oil is flammable. Any fuel is. You store it the same way you would store diesel, in a proper container, out of the sun, away from the stove, away from the children. The press itself gets warm during operation, but not dangerously hot. Wear gloves if you are pressing for a long stretch. And if you are converting oil into biodiesel, you are working with lye, which is caustic, and methanol, which is poison. Wear gloves, wear eye protection, and work outside or in a well-ventilated space. This is not casual chemistry. Treat it with the same respect you would treat any strong chemical. My father does not rush this part, and neither should you. Now I want to tell you about one more thing this oil does, because it is the thing that changed the way I think about these crops entirely, and it has nothing to do with engines. In 2007, the World Health Organization published a field report documenting something relief workers in Africa and Asia had been using for years. Crushed Moringa seeds purify contaminated water. The proteins in the seed grab onto bacteria, the kind that cause cholera and dysentery and a dozen other diseases that kill people in places with no clean water, and they cause those bacteria to clump together and sink to the bottom. In testing, the bacteria count dropped by 90 to 99% in 30 minutes. One crushed seed treats 1 liter of water. The University of Leicester confirmed it in a peer-reviewed study. Relief organizations were distributing Moringa seeds in disaster zones because they worked faster than chemical tablets and could be grown locally by anyone. The same seed that makes fuel for your engine makes clean water for your family in an emergency. A mature Moringa tree produces enough seeds for both every year for 20 years from a single planting. Sunflower seeds do not do this, but Moringa does. And even if you live in the north and cannot grow Moringa outdoors year-round, you can buy dried Moringa seeds online for a few dollars a bag and store them for up to 5 years. They keep without refrigeration. That is worth knowing when the next hurricane or flood or ice storm knocks out your water for a week and nobody is coming to help. Now I want to take a moment because this is the part that matters, and it is bigger than a jar of oil. Think about who profits from the way your fuel reaches you. The drilling company profits, the pipeline company profits, the refinery profits, the shipping company profits, the gas station profits, the state takes a tax, the federal government takes another. By the time a gallon of diesel reaches your tank, a dozen hands have touched it, and every one of them took a cut. None of them grew anything. None of them made anything. They moved a liquid from one place to another and charged you for the privilege. A jar of oil pressed from seeds you grew in your own field has no middleman. There is no invoice. There is no contract. There is no price you cannot control. And that, not the efficiency, not the emissions, not the chemistry, that is the reason you have never heard a fuel company recommend it. There is no business model in a man who grows his own fuel. You cannot build a quarterly earnings report on a farmer with a press and a field of sunflowers. So the knowledge was not banned. It was not made illegal. It was simply left out of the conversation, drowned under a century of advertising for the product somebody else could profit from. The engine was designed for plant oil. The plant oil was designed by the sun. And the only thing standing between you and free fuel is a bag of seeds and a press bolted to your workbench. My father said something to me last September that I have been thinking about ever since. We were standing by the press, waiting for the oil to drain into the jar, and he was watching the sunflower field through the open barn door. He said, "The English think fuel is something you buy, but fuel is just stored sunshine. The plant catches the light and holds it in the seed. The press lets the light back out. You pour it in the engine, and the engine turns. Every step of that belongs to you. No pipeline, no refinery, no man in a suit deciding what you pay. Just the sun and the seed and the work of your own hands. That is not a fuel system. That is freedom." And then he picked up his coffee and walked back out to the field, because my father has never been one to stand around after he has said a thing. He was not talking about fuel. He was talking about the difference between owning your life and renting it. And he was not just talking about our family. He was talking about yours too. So here is what I want you to do this month. First, decide which seed fits your climate. If you are in zones 9 through 11, consider Moringa. A packet of seeds is $5 to $10 online. Plant them this spring and you will have seed pods by fall. If you are anywhere else, start with black oil sunflower seed. A 50-pound bag from the farm supply store is $25 to $30, and you can press it this weekend without growing a single plant. Second, get yourself a manual seed press. Search for a manual oil press or cold press oil expeller. They run between $80 and $150. Cast iron and steel. Bolt it to your workbench or a sturdy table. Third, press a batch. Pour the seeds in the hopper, crank the handle, watch the oil come out. Let it settle for 48 hours, then filter it through a $5 fuel filter or a cheesecloth bag. Fourth, find the simplest diesel engine you own or can borrow. A generator is ideal. Pour the filtered oil in the tank and start it up. Listen to it run. You will hear no difference. You will smell something like a kitchen instead of a gas station, and you will understand in about 30 seconds of listening to that engine turnover that the fuel bill was never mandatory. It was just the only option you were ever shown. Total cost to start, press, and first bag of seed and filters, under $200. The fuel after that is the cost of seed and your time. An afternoon of pressing gives you weeks of fuel for a small engine, and every season you grow your own seed is a season the fuel cost drops to zero. Tell me in the comments below what diesel equipment you have on your property right now. A generator, a tractor, a water pump, a sawmill. Tell me what state you are in and whether you have the land to grow sunflower or moringa. I read every single one of these. I read the best ones to my father over coffee, and he nods at every one. He wants to know how it goes for you as much as I do. And once you have pressed your first jar of oil and run an engine on it, come back and tell me what it sounded like. Because the first time you hear a diesel run on oil you grew yourself is something most folks do not forget. Next time, I'm going to show you what my father does with the press cake, the dry material left over after pressing. That turns what most people throw away into the single best fertilizer and animal feed on this farm. It is the other half of the system, the half that closes the loop, and it involves nothing but a bucket, a chicken yard, and a compost pile that does something you would not expect. It is the natural next step after today. Until then, find your seeds, bolt down your press, and let the sun do what it has been doing since before any of us were born. And remember, the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.